Good afternoon. I hope you're ready for 18 minutes, well, 17 minutes and 50 seconds that will change the world and how you view the corporate startup ecosystem, right?
Of course.
So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to talk a little bit about what they see and what they do from their own particular corporate vantage point, and then we'll have a bit of a conversation and it will evolve organically from there. Obviously, there's an ebb and flow here as public markets have repriced and revalued a lot of what startups are doing, and there's a whole series of questions about VC funding and pipelines, but companies in particular, I think, have a different time frame and different needs than pure either venture capitalists who are looking for returns either now or quick exits from their companies and for their limited partners and for their GPs, as opposed to companies which I think have a more sort of holistic, organic, how's this going to help our strategy? And I think it's a different way to think about where a startup is going and what it's focused on. So we will just kind of go down the line and start with Elaina.
So maybe introduction. So I'm Elaina Shekhter. I'm the Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer for EPAM Systems. We're a global engineering company. We do product and platform work for mostly global 1,000 enterprises. We're approaching about $5 billion in revenue. We operate in 58 countries. And mostly what we get up to is engineering DNA. And our ventures program is really one large experiment, still is, and still in progress.
And tell us, how long have you been doing it? How many companies?
Oh, yeah, so we've been doing this for probably about 4 years. We invest through a fund, about $50 million fund that invests in a combination of tech and health tech. And then we make direct investments as well. We have 4 criteria for those, and I'm happy to share.
Give us the criteria, and then we'll go on to Jen.
So we invest in companies that are truly disruptive technology, so nothing that's Me Too. We invest in companies that we could take to our customers, so enterprise portfolio. If we can't take you to our customers, we're probably not investing. We also invest in someone who has been in market already to some extent. And then we also look for companies for whom, in the end, we're an accelerator. So we're helping you with product development, go-to-market, channel, sales, and deployment.
Cool. So Jen, when I first saw I was going to be on the panel, I thought you were a general. I was very excited about that. And
many people make those mistakes.
I'm a little bit disappointed, but I think we'll be all right. Some of you may have heard of Sony, a small Japanese company that's really trying to break into the global market. And maybe you can tell us a bit about the venture program that you've been heading up.
Well, thank you very much. Well, as you know, I think Sony somewhat is known for the Walkman and the TVs and the cameras. But at this point, we're more of an entertainment and more of a semiconductor company. And so I run Sony Innovation Fund globally. And we have made roughly, of course, Sony has invested in lots of startups over the years, but we made it a fund formation back in 2016. And we've invested in roughly 150 companies to date. I have teams in US, Europe, Israel, India, and Japan. And we make investments in many countries. So, the environment obviously is a very tough one, but we're constantly continuing to invest in many growing startups.
How do you, if you have a kind of a global reach, right?
Yes.
How do you find companies? How do you find people in Europe and wherever?
Well, so we have teams. So I pulled out people in many Sony people who have in the regions have had long history of working with startups. So like my US team has been working with startups for 20 years, same as the European team. And but they were in the job, their initial job was finding startups, but now I've really worked with them so that they could grow up to become investors.
And why do you need that? You have like a massive group of developers and programmers and a long legacy of developing your own content. Why bother with?
Well, the culture of the company, I think, is very important. Sony, after 75 years, still has a very strong founders company mentality. And Morita-san and Ibuka-san came to Earth to really disrupt and make innovation. And that thinking still is embedded very firmly in the firm's culture. So the employees are all I was very frankly surprised to find so many employees interested in dealing with startups and finding out what the startups were doing. And that really created really a win-win relationship between many of our employees who have many expertise and the startups. And that naturally, we want to continue to grow our portfolio, get into interesting businesses, and so we learn through the communities that many of the startups are building.
So Sophia, you've been on both sides of this fence, right? You've both started your own companies, and now you're working with a hospital group on finding innovative startups. We talked a little bit about somewhat counterintuitive to think of hospitals being in the business of innovation, but maybe you can talk a bit about that and how COVID changed some of that horizon as well.
Definitely. Actually, hello everyone. It's really a pleasure to be able to join these both mindsets on corporate and startups. I think COVID made us a favor in the sense that it was so obvious that we need to be fast whenever we needed something new, that it's much easier, cheaper, and it makes much more sense for the community to take those solutions from the market and to help them either to grow, to be licensed, or to go to be incorporated. And that was what we understood from COVID right away. So we tried to change also our team's mindset, because this is a culture, like Jen was saying, the culture here is really important. So we started small, thinking how like if we were a SWAT team that would tackle a problem, ask another SWAT team, like the startup, to enter, to share with us, and then to scale up, or sometimes, if it's not possible, to kill the project as soon as possible so that it doesn't make no one lose time. This is a challenge, but at the same time, it has a very important point, which is startups, regarding what they tackle, they have the highest purpose of anyone else. There's no one in the market, no corporation has the same feeling, intention, purpose, so making a solution to a specific problem as they have. So from our side, as a corporate, we can benefit from that strong why and give them the how and the what. I think it's like win-win for the community, for the startup, and for the corporation.
So you mentioned the degree to which healthcare in particular was really jolted obviously by COVID. I mean, we're all jolted by COVID, but in particular, it's something that was not used to being quick, not used to being nimble, not used to being responsive. And so, I mean, talk about that a little, about where that stands now. I mean, I know in the United States, a lot of healthcare went onto telemedicine, but now the regulations are shifting back to what they were prior, which makes that whole world somewhat unclear and uncertain. I mean, because the instinct of these organizations is often to be slow, steady, and conservative, not to be innovative, quick, and nimble. What's happening now?
Of course. So in healthcare, we have this benefit and not that good part, which is we are always the last ones normally to incorporate technology.
Right.
So technology, when reach healthcare, it's normally more mature, which is good. So we know what to expect, how to implement, goods and bad parts, but it's normally the last one. And in that sense, regulation plays, of course, a very important role, not only in terms of cost to have it regulated, meaning whenever a startup wants to go through the process to be a medical device or something like that, but even whenever a hospital wants to be a little bit disruptive. Because, of course, you have good practices. You have GDPR in a very sensitive part, which is health data. You have all the cybersecurity points that are crucial because no one wants their data, of course, outside. So anything that goes outside of the walls of the hospital, like outside of EPAM, it's always a drama. And that was something that COVID, for a period of time, just changed it. On the other hand, due to COVID, we have European entities, we have national entities, all adapting to it, meaning generating new regulations, which I'm very glad that is happening because they are better and they are allowing us also to scale up whenever we need. Imagine a patient going to a teleconsultation that needs ER. This was not regulated. So you could be in the end of the world, no one would know it, no one would help you. And now you have to have it right away. So this is getting better in my sense of view.
So Elaina, and to some degree Jen, I mean, you work for and run a divisions of a multi-billion-dollar company, thousands of people, lots of different parts of the world. Why even bother to incubate or work with startups? I mean, you could buy a startup rather than just incubate it. You could hire a bunch of people rather than take the risk on, frankly, something that's both untested and unclear. So why take the risk?
Well, first of all, we do all that. We hire people and we buy.
I mean, I hope so. You're a multi-billion-dollar company with your earnings coming tomorrow. So.
And honestly, we've bought something like a dozen companies in the last 18 months, and that's a project on integration. And if anyone here has been through an integration having been bought, you know what that experience might be like. The reason we invest in startups is because we're looking for a solution to a complex, specific problem, and that problem demands obsessive focus and demands a dedicated management team and a structure that combines kind of go-to-market plus product and solutioning, that our goal is to take and turnkey into an accelerator for our customers. Why we don't do it ourselves is because we're still learning over the course of the last probably 5 years, is that you can either be a very good product company or you could be a very good service company. It's difficult to be a very good both. And so our positioning is we're a services company. We help our customers solve their problems. Bringing startups to those problems is one way of accelerating the solution. And honestly, we learn a lot from our startups. I mean, outside of the value proposition for customers, there's never been a single investment that we've made that hasn't taught certainly the management team one or two things. The biggest of the learnings is that you have to be willing to pivot at least once or twice, most likely more.
Yeah, I mean, this is a theme that you often hear from companies that do this, which is they're often putting themselves forward as we provide mentorship or an accelerator or initial capital. But the flip side is the amount of learning that established corporations get from the startups and from the entrepreneurs and from that kind of hunger and new lenses. I mean, do you find that as well?
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because when we went into this, the fund business 7 years ago, we really lined up technology items and says these are the technology items we're going to be chasing. But then what we found out was it's not the technology. It's more about the quality of the entrepreneurs. It's about the business model. It's about the community that they're creating between the entrepreneur and the actual users. And so that really fascinated us, and the speed at they were moving forward, and the capability to pivot when needed. These were all. So that created so many fans of startups in the Sony community, and that's why we have a very strong support from the management team to many of the employees on what we're doing.
So each of you presumably get semi-deluged with ideas and interest and people, and have to have your own filters. Some of those filters you've talked about, which are just categories. There are certain types of companies, I don't know, like a crypto geolocation company, you may not be interested in. No offense if that's 8 people here. But what do you look for? What grabs your attention versus puts you to sleep or leads you to go, no, I'm not interested, when you're solicited or when you're approached?
So
each of you.
Yeah, I think everybody has their own approach, but my case, I mean, I keep all the process very bottom up, and so that let's say in terms of health tech, there will be somebody in Japan, somebody in US, somebody in Europe looking at the whole global health tech startups, and they look at many different companies, and what they find interesting, they would present to more of the investment committee members. And I think this bottom-up process works better than us saying this is a company we should go in and invest, because the whole process is just so clean and very creative. With this bottom-up process.
And Sophia, what
Definitely.
Do you look for yourself? Do you look for an earlier version of you? Do you look for something different?
Definitely. I think we are all iterative, so I'm iterating all the time. And actually, with startups, and something that is really interesting, we are seeing more and more researchers, like not the typical entrepreneur that we normally see, the one that just finished a university and just start something. We see a lot of people that did their PhD, post-PhD. They are really willing to bring technology, biotechnology, digital health to the reality. And there are people that really know about it. And this knowledge, whenever we talk to them, instead of listening just a pitch, much more than the pitch, I'm very interested in understand how much do they know about it, how much do they care, and if they have this zoom out capacity to understand how is the environment around it. Because we see a lot entrepreneurs where we talk to that, of course, they are so focused on their subject that sometimes when we start to do questions around, they just live in denial. No, this doesn't happen. No, there's not another one. No competitors, and so on and so forth. So I think this knowledge about, a deep knowledge about the information or the product or the service they are providing is the core part, definitely.
So you want this kind of combination of incredible passion and focus on what it is that you're doing, but simultaneously open and aware of the whole ecosystem, in which you're functioning.
Exactly. Nothing lives alone. So if they don't have this vision, it's going to fall. So.
It's kind of like altruistic narcissism. Yeah. And what do you look? What sparks you when you?
Well, we consider ourselves a startup still, many years later.
And I consider myself 25.
And so we look for sort of cultural affinity. We're engineers by our cultural kind of heritage. I look for, we have a similar setup where it's bottom up, but I look for people that are obsessed with the problem rather than being obsessed with the solution that they've already created. And when you talk to them and you say, well, this is a problem, it's bigger than you, how are you going to solve it? I mean, then there's been some really amazing examples from our portfolio, like cookieless future. Here's a problem.
Like what future?
Cookieless future.
Okay.
How do you do, tracking and marketing?
I was worried for a moment. I thought you meant like the absence of the edible ones, and
No.
that was alarming me as a future.
That would be a global tragedy.
Yeah.
If
So
cookies disappeared.
let's not go there.
But no, I mean, and so when you talk to the management team and you say, okay, you've identified this problem, it's a really big problem, there's a small team of you've got some great ideas over technology solution, how are you going to solve it? And they give you some sensible answer. And then you say, well, if you could solve that problem, how do you feel about disintermediating merchant coupons and taking out the clearinghouses? And they go, feel good, let's do it. So that's kind of what we look for. And then you ask them how, and they give you an enterprise architecture stack that you go, okay, try it.
And in our last 20 seconds, when you walk around all these pavilions and see, incredible energy and a lot of people, some of whom are here, trying to make a difference, make a company, do something, do you find that invigorating? Do you find that overwhelming? Do you find that like, wow, this is going to be a harder road? What's the feeling? Each of you, just briefly.
Honestly,
yeah,
it's a little overwhelming. I kind of wonder, maybe this is news to all of you, but I think the environment is shifting. Sort of the world of free money may be behind us to some extent. So, I mean, I just kind of wonder what the filter mechanism in this new world looks like.
Jen?
Well, many people in my Euro team are here, and we're happy to work together.
Good answer. Sophia?
I am always worried that the good solutions or the good people that know very well the problem, they are around there and that I can lose them. That's where I'm worried about.
Well, the Fed's meeting in like 3 hours, so we'll know the exact cost of money in about 3 hours. You should all look at that. Anyway, thank you all for your time, your energy, your visions, and thank you.